Welcome to Horse Bytes, your go-to source for keeping up with the show jumping world. Summer five stars are in full swing, with another global taking place in Stockholm last week, while Spruce Meadows saw its third five-star of the summer series up in Canada. WEC in Ocala also hosted a rare summer four-star for those who stayed in the southern U.S. states this season. We've gone through the top 6 teams heading into Paris, so now it's time to look at the individual athletes representing their countries at the Games. 15 individual nations have earned their Olympic tickets, but it's up to the federations on who they eventually choose to represent them in Paris. So we are going to break down the likely contenders, and as of last Wednesday, the FEI published their proposed rule changes for 2025, so we are going to go through them so you know what's possibly coming in the new year. Horse Bytes is heading to Aachen. Make sure to come out Wednesday, July 3rd to the Aachen Showgrounds for a meet and greet session. We'll test out the new Steuben bridle and saddle configurator, and if you can't join us in person, make sure to stay tuned to our Instagram Live with special guests. We'll be at the Steuben stand in the vendor village and around the grounds all day doing giveaways and with special opportunities to be featured on the show. Don't miss out, and we'll see you in Aachen. Belgium's Olivier Philipparts and H&M Miro clinched their first ever CSI 5-star global event in Stockholm this weekend over Sweden's Wilma Hellström and fellow countryman Jerome Guéry.
It is Olivier Philipparts.
Matthew Sampson, currently ranked 88th in the world standings.
British rider Matthew Sampson and Daniel took the win in the CSI 5-star Pan American Cup up at Spruce Meadows, where the teary-eyed rider praised his mount for being one of the most incredible horses he's ever had. And fresh off his European tour, Aaron Vale and Graves Inn took the CSI 4-star in Ocala under the lights at the WEC Arena, besting a field of 5 in the jump-off. Welcome to Showstopper, powered by EquiRatings. Well, we've gone through the major team contenders, and now it's time to look at the individuals who will join the 20 teams competing in Paris. 15 nations have acquired their Olympic ticket to the Games, but the slot is awarded to the countries themselves and not the individuals who earned them. Something that has caused quite some drama over the years when top qualifiers were bypassed by the selectors for various reasons. Perhaps the most notable of those was back in Rio when Ireland's Bertram Allen won the ticket for the Irish, but Greg Broderick was chosen to represent the country at the Games. Lawsuits and hoopla ensued, as you can imagine. But this year for Paris, let's take a look at which countries will be faced with that similar decision and see who, by the stats, most likely deserve to go and have a strong chance of a top result. Denmark likely sends Andreas Schau and Dark Deluxe on an ELO of 640, although with the recent win of Sasha Nygaard-Lille and Stanley in the 4-star a few weeks ago, they are a close second, or even Rika Belinda Barker and Tabalu PS, who have been jumping 60% of the time clear. Yali Mitilineu of Greece, who occupies the top 4 spots on the list, could either take Levi Demuse on 716 or Lartis de Toxandria on 671, a fan favorite who finished in the top 12 at the European Championships in Riesenbeck a few years ago. Italy has a few strong choices, with Emmanuel Camilli sitting on top of the list, with Odense Odeveld with a very strong ELO of 723, but Delta de Lille and Julia Martinegro Marquet on 716 aren't far behind and have an even higher clear rate percentage of 50%. Emmanuel Gaudiano sits high on the list, but without a true meter 60 horse, his selection is unlikely, despite him being one of Italy's strongest riders. Norway has already selected their representative with Victoria Gulliksen and Mistral van de Vogelzang on an ELO of 667. They don't have the highest clear rate percentage at 33%. However, compared to the other options, it is by far the highest. Egypt has an interesting choice to make between Nile Nasser and Mauda Zayada. Nile tops the FEI list currently with Coronado, but as far as ELO, Nile's other horse, Igor, sits at 734 and a 40% clear rate, while Coronado sits lower on 711 and only a 28.6% clear rate. On the other hand, Zayada's mount, If Looks Could Kill, has an ELO of 603 and a 22.2% clear rate, but is second on the FEI list, and politics could play a role. Portugal, Argentina, Venezuela, Chile, Colombia, New Zealand, Thailand, Syria, Latvia, and Luxembourg will also send representatives. And as usual, the total start list of 75 athletes will be filled with a worldwide representation of show jumping, encompassing a broad range of abilities that will fulfill the Olympic mission of strengthening the universality of the Games. Thank you guys so much for everyone who has watched and subscribed to Horse Bytes so far. The show has been seen by over 12 million people to date, but not all 12 million of you have subscribed yet. It means so much to us to have your support, and the more people who subscribe and follow along, the more tailored the content can become. We'd love for you to share your feedback, hit the subscribe button below, and help us bring you the best show jumping highlights from around the world. This week on Weekly Wonder, we're covering the recently released proposed rule changes from the FEI. Every year, the FEI proposes new rule changes during the FEI Sports Forum across all the disciplines. As of last Wednesday, the proposed changes for 2025 are in, including anti-doping and controlled medication suggestions, and voting will take place on the 13th of November at the FEI General Assembly. National federations can now weigh in proposed changes and review the amendments before the final draft is sent in. So let's take a look at what changes might be coming next year in the world of jumping. From the general rules, the most notable comments came as rejections from the FEI regarding two major topics. First, the use of artificial training aids that might cause pain or limit natural movement of the horse, like attaching elastic bands to the horse's legs. The FEI rejected this general ethics proposal because they argued it needed to be part of a larger discussion regarding reports of abuse through proper channels. Fine, don't disagree. And secondly, the IJRC asked that athletes could challenge field of play decisions during the live events, but the FEI said it would not be manageable and would open the door for all decisions not to be taken seriously. Okay, that does seem fair to assume. From the jumping rules, the most notable proposal came regarding saddlery, and a working group suggested that in their experience, publishing only what is allowed leaves less room for discussion and more authority for stewards. First was regarding the constitution of bits, where they put forth a catalog of what they consider to be acceptable bits. This is all well and good until someone wants to be creative and it doesn't cause harm but still isn't permitted. And secondly, regulations regarding the bridles and nosebands. Basically, they want only one noseband or hackamore on the bridge of the nose at one time that isn't too tight and has no sharp edges. Also seems reasonable, although this would affect a lot of current bridles in use today. Overall, the FEI was open to these changes, but said they would discuss it in the overhaul that is to take place to the jumping rules come 2025. From the veterinary rules, and this is one kicking up the most fuss in the news, for years, grooms and athletes have wanted to limit event schedules from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. to allow for at least 10 hours between classes for horses and 9 hours for athletes. The FEI didn't even comment on this, only to say they are pushing any decision till at least 2026. Not the most empathetic response from the FEI, since calls for this change have been going on for years. It is proposed, and the FEI agreed with a slight change in wording, to prohibit the shaving of hair within the ears of a horse at any FEI event. Already prohibited in Germany at national events, this will now apply to all FEI events worldwide. This comes after shaving of all sensory hairs around the eyes and muzzle were prohibited a few years back. Seems appropriate and nicer for the horses, although this might cause a big stir in the US market, where shaving the ears is common practice. And finally, from the equine anti-doping and controlled medication regulations, which saw a full review, the most important change would come from the potential of out-of-competition testing, which would impose a 2-month suspension for horses that also test positive while off competition grounds, with the owner becoming the person responsible. Not even sure where to start with the ethics of this, not to mention the logistics of implementing such tests. And on top of that, it is proposed to introduce hair and saliva testing to increase the detection window of banned substances. Yikes. This is going to cause quite a bit of controversy if you ask us, but it will keep our sport cleaner, that's for sure. Each year, the changes typically follow this similar pattern, with equine welfare taking a more prominent role year after year. It's always interesting to see how the federations and people in the sport respond to the changes, but for now, this gives you a good indication of where the sport is heading next year. But now, if your brain isn't too confused, let's enjoy the wild things from this past week. All right, first up from our wild things of the week, Pony Kid. Whoa! The lion,
look at those legs go everywhere. Uh-oh, this one. Oh, pony's being naughty. Oh, got it back. Yes! And this one is unbelievable. Look at the big jump. Horse clears it. Oh, girl ends up on the side, but that is a wild jump.
That's a wrap on this week's top highlights. Stay tuned to all of our socials. Make sure to subscribe and follow along all the action as it unfolds here on Horse Bytes, your go-to source for keeping up with the show jumping world.